सभी को नमस्कार। पूरे भारत भर से और भारत के बाहर के जितने भी सारे हमारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं, मैं उन सभी का यहाँ स्वागत करता हूँ। आज का हमारा ये सत्र इंडियन म्यूजिक थ्रू द एजेस उसका पहला सेशन है और मैं आदरणीय नीलिमा ताई को विनती करता हूँ कि कृपया डॉक्टर केशव चैतन्य कुंटे सर का वो परिचय करवाएं। ताई, क्या आपको मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
हाँ जी, धन्यवाद सर। मेरी आवाज आ रही है आपको? थैंक यू सो मच सर
जी।
नीलिमा प्रोडक्शंस पुणे और कला एकेडमी मुंबई, इनके संयुक्तिक रूप से एक नया दौर अभी हमने शुरू कर दिया है। एक अलग लेक्चर सीरीज हमने स्टार्ट कर दी है, जिसकी शुरुआत इस सीरीज का फर्स्ट कोर्स हमारे साथ जुड़ी थी पंडिता शमाताई भाटे जी, और वो अभी संपन्न हो गया है। और वो टॉपिक था म्यूजिक एंड ओवरव्यू ऑफ कथक। और आज से हम इसी संगीत को आगे लेकर जा रहे हैं। आज के हमारे रिसोर्स पर्सन है डॉक्टर चैतन्य जी कुंटे। मैं उनका बहुत बहुत स्वागत यहाँ पे करती हूँ। और आज से पूरे 7 दिन इसी वक्त यानी 7 से 8 हम इस संगीत के साथ चैतन्य जी के साथ जुड़े रहेंगे। इस 1 घंटे में लास्ट के 10 मिनट जो रहेंगे वो क्वेश्चन आंसर्स के लिए ओपन रहेंगे। जिस किसको कुछ भी पूछना होगा तो उस वक्त वो पूछ सकते हैं। और अभी मैं सृष्टि हिरवे जी को यहाँ पे आमंत्रित करती हूँ कि वो चैतन्य जी का हमें परिचय करके दें।
Namaskar Chaitanya Dada. Dr. Keshav Chaitanya Kunte, also known as Chaitanya Kunte in the performing world, is a harmonium player, composer, a researcher in cultural musicology, and a guru. Chaitanya received extensive training in Hindustani art, music under 3 eminent gurus, Dr. Arvind Thatte, Pandit Mohan Rao Karve, and Dr. Ashok Daranade. Dr. Kunte is one of the leading harmonium players, having accompanied maestros such as Bhimsen Joshi, Kishori Amankar, Prabha Atre, Ulhas Kashakar, Rashid Khan, Ashwini Bhide, Aarti Anklikar, and many others. He has toured USA, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Dubai, Japan, Israel for concerts. He also presents solo harmonium concerts and lecture demonstrations. Dr. Kunte is also a prominent composer of this generation, and he has composed more than 400 compositions covering a wide range of musical genres. After attaining degrees, MA in Indology and History, and an MPhil in Archaeology, Chaitanya Kunte has done Sangeet Alankar. He is also recipient of Fellowship for Research Work on Tappa from Ministry of Culture, Government of India. He has edited journals and books including Marmagya, Sangeet Sangati, etc. He has co-authored book Paschatya Sangeet Saudhnya Kosh with Dr. Ashok Daranade. Dr. Kunte is currently working as assistant professor and guru at Center for Performing Arts of Savitribai Phule, Pune University. He is founder director of Dr. Ashok Daranade Archives for Performing Culture, Pune. Dr. Kunte has received awards such as Pandit Govindrao Patwardhan Harmonium Award, Keshavrao Bhole Sangeetkar Puraskar, Vasantotsav Award, Dhrupad Gayak Shankarao Ashtekar Award, Rohini Bhate Award for Music Compositions for Dance, Music Forum Research Award, etc. Chaitanya Dada, warm welcome, and we are extremely blessed to have you on board. Now I hand over to Chaitanya Dada for further session.
Thank you, Srishti, for this nice introduction. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir. Yes, you are audible. Yeah, welcome.
So, I welcome you all for this online short-term course on history of Indian music. The title is given as Indian Music Through the Ages. And in the next 7 days, we are going to discuss few important aspects of Indian music and its history. So basically, I have uh, made few topics for each day. So in the first day, we will discuss about the historiographical framework uh, with which we can understand the history of Indian music. Um, in tomorrow's session, we will handle historiographical journey of Hindustani music and especially in the area of forms of music as such. Then we will discuss about the musicological texts from ancient times to modern times in the third day. And of course, the next 3 days will be about ancient Indian music, medieval music, and the changes happen in modern music. So this is a rough plan of the 7 days, and the seventh day is totally dedicated to the interactive part, that is question answers. And of course, in this 6 days also you can interact with me freely. There is no problem. In fact, I welcome interactions because that is a more comfortable zone for me also. Now, please tell how many of you are not very much comfortable with English. So if the number is large, then I can also talk in Hindi, because I think there are some participants who are from abroad and from other parts of India. So I will primarily speak in English, but otherwise I will also explain in Hindi. Okay, someone has.
मुझे लग रहा है दादा थोड़ा हिंदी और
Yeah.
इंग्लिश दोनों में चलेगा. नीलिमा बात करेगी.
Yes, yes, yes.
हाँ, it's comfortable. Yes.
Okay, so let me present a slide with you. Just a minute.
For presentation at bottom side, there is present now. If you will click,
Yeah.
then yeah.
Actually, I'm not able to choose the specific window which I'm trying to share. So just 1 minute. Okay, so can you see this slide?
Yes,
Because
Dada.
I'm not able to.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yes, Dada. Yes.
So let us begin with the very basic concept of history, because otherwise we will not be able to understand the history of music in a pure sense. So what is history and what is historiography we'll discuss first, and then we'll go to Indian music. So as we know, the etymology suggests that history, the word history has a root from Greek language, historia, which means inquiry, knowledge, and acquired by investigation. So one can say that what is history? So it is a continuous, systematic, significant narrative of past events as relating to particular people, country, period, person, etc., usually written as a chronological account. Now, here there are some important facets of this definition as such. Like this is a chronological account. So chronology is very important in history. I know that most of the people hate chronologies. Uh, me, I am not the exception for this. But of course, we need to understand the chronology better to have a clearer picture of the history. And it has a narrative of past. Now, this is very important fact that it has a narrative. History tells us something, and what it tells, it's about the people, that human beings, the society, the culture. Also, it tells about the period, that is, we talked about chronology. It talks about country. So, in a way, it is a chronological graph of the development of human beings on a larger spectrum. Professor A.L. Rose had explained history in a very apt manner. He says history is essentially a record of the life of men in societies in their geographical and physical environments. Their social and cultural environments arise from the interaction of the one with the other and the society and its geographical condition. So he suggests that history is basically a narrative or a record of human interactions. And these interactions are not just socio-cultural, but these interactions are geographical, or they deal with the physical environment. And in this physical environment, the culture is there. So we are going to talk about Indian music, which is an essential part of the culture as such. So history deals with primarily people, events, ideas, religions, and cultures. So all this happens in specific period, specific region, and socioeconomic and political environments. So when we talk of history of music, we need to understand. So if we say that, oh, Vedic music was like this. So we need to understand what is exactly the Vedic period. What is or geographical location of this Vedic society or Vedic culture? How the Vedic people were living? What was the economic structure and political ethos of the Vedic people? And then only we can understand what is Vedic music. So without understanding these headings, like periods, regions, socioeconomic and political environments, and the people, events, ideas, and the culture, we cannot understand the music. Hence, history can be studied in various aspects such as geographical or environmental history, political history, or diplomatic history. Then it can be or gender history, economic history, intellectual history. And right now, we are talking about history of music, which is a part of cultural history or art history. So there are many modes or models of history which deal with the historical facts in different ways. Like if we talk about political history, then it is an entirely different kind of historiography being applied. So for cultural history, we must understand all these aspects. What was the society? What was the way of living? What was the political? What were the political events? And basically, for understanding the cultural history and, of course, the history of music, we need to understand the changes in the ideas and the living ideology of people at that time. So naturally, history has basically two dimensions to which we need to address constantly. The first is time and second is space. So when we talk about Amir Khusro, So we need to ask these two questions. In which period was Tansen, or in which period Amir Khusro was there? So why period is important? Because it suggests a certain phase of the development in human ideas or human culture. And we need to ask the second question, in which space this person or this event happened. So if we say that Amir Khusro was in northern India and Tyagaraja was in the south part of India, so that signifies a lot of things. And that's why we need to understand time and space. So Dr. Anade used to say that these are the two twinkling eyes of history, time and space. Okay, it is always a criticism on India that India doesn't have any history. India has no history. Why it was so? Because in the Western world, we get to know that India, the other parts of the world have elaborate sort of record of history. Like the Greeks, even the Chinese people or the Eastern people have chronological records of the historical events. They have written histories. On the contrary, India is has not invested its intelligentsia in writing down. So what kind of history we have? So it is in oral tradition, Maukhik Parampara. And as Maukhik Parampara or oral tradition is a tradition which depends not on the written documents, but it depends on verbal communication passed, or the verbal information passed on to the generations. And naturally, there might be a lot of changes. And that's why we cannot depend on the so-called historical sources from India. Like, what are the sources? Like Vedas, Angas, like Upanishads, Aranyakas, etc. Then we have Darshana Granthas. Then we have other secular texts. We have Puranas, we have Smruti Granthas, etc. So as we know, there are major 18 Puranas, and we can see that there are a lot of lacunas in the history, or they don't match with each other about the facts. And most of the times, the epics and Puranas in India, they are written in a mythological fashion. So most of the Western scholars don't believe in these epics, that is Ramayana, Mahabharata, or the Puranas, as historical sources. They say that this is these are stories, these are hearsays. We cannot depend them as sources, authentic sources of history. The thing is, for at least ancient times, most of the history is preserved in this form. And naturally, you have to depend on these sources as authentic sources of history. So what are the other sources that are archaeological sources? There are inscriptions, sculptures, paintings, which can be said as authentic sources of history. From the medieval times, actually, we get so-called authentic sources, which are written documents. As we know that from the Islamic invasion onwards, as the Middle Eastern kingship, they were having a regular system of writing. history or the royal history. So there were royal historiographers who used to write down the history. Like we have Abul Fazl's treatise on reign of certain Mughal emperor. There is Akbarnama, there is Jahangirnama, there is Aine Akbari, which is Akbarnama. Aine Akbari is written by Abul Fazl. So such kind of treatises tell us about the reign or the events happen in a period of specific emperor. So such things are the sources of history. But there are certain about the history of India. So let me again share this PPT. So the reason for lack of history in India, as I said, the emphasis is on oral tradition. There is a lack of written documents which can provide strong evidence. There is scarcity of primary sources, leading to the dependency on secondary and tertiary sources. Now, India has a specific inclination towards philosophy, and specifically the philosophy of Advaita, non-dual existence. And we believe on the cycle of birth, rebirth, Punarjanma, the chakra of Punarjanma. So this belief and this philosophical inclination in India that leads to a tendency of negligence towards the mundane things. So we don't take the credit for some work. And of course, we don't take efforts for preservation and documentation. So we seldom get the names of the artists who did manifested the brilliant artisanship. Like we don't know who were the painters of Ajanta, who were the sculptors of Ellora. We don't know anything about them. So yes, we know that so and so king invested in building such caves or such temples, but we don't know about actual artists as such, or we don't know about who was Gopal Nayak, where did he live, or what was the exact period, what was the personal details of Gopal Nayak. So there is no personal account written of such artists, such musicians. It is very late from, we can say that about from after 16th century, we get some information about the musicians as such. Otherwise, in the whole ancient period and half of the middle period, we don't get any sort of details of the musicians or the performance, mode of performance. Also, we Indians believe that society is important than a person. व्यक्ति से समष्टि महत्वपूर्ण, ये हमारा सिद्धांत होता है. So naturally there is no personal documentation. We tend to document the major areas which are important for the society and not for the persons or the individuals. And that's why we lack the history. Then there are other challenges in study of history in India. Like for especially the study of Indian music history, there are challenges like we don't have written scores, unlike the Western or European music, because European music essentially depends on the written scores, notations, thoughts, and that's why we find compositions written from almost 1 century or older than 1 century also. But we cannot find the compositions or the actual music until say 14th or 15th century. So there is nothing which has percolated to our generations as authentic music from the far remote past. Also, musicians' personal documentation is not there. We just so how the musicians were thinking, what was their performing experience, what were their performing strategies. This is not documented. And the recording technology arrived in India around late decade or the last decade of 19th century. And the first record commercially published was in 1903. The recording started like from 1898 or 99, but the recordings came into circulation just only after 1903. So there is no documentation, actual physical record of the sound in India before that period. That's mean we have a recorded history of Indian music just for a century. Before that, we don't know anything. So we do have Indian musicological treatises like Natya Shastra, Brihad Deshi, Sangeet Ratnakar, but all these treatises don't reflect on the actual performance or performers. Rather, they give concepts and theories. They give classification systems, and which are in a generalized manner. They are not specific. So when Natya Shastra gives a system of a certain, say, like karanas of playing any kind of instrument. Karana means hand techniques or playing techniques. So when Natya Shastra or any treatise like Sangeet Ratnakar gives the karanas, they just enlist the techniques of playing the instrument, but they don't actually make it clear that how a musician can create a performance out of these techniques. So we get the concepts, we get the theories, we get the terms, but not actual music. Yeah, that is a problem with the history of Indian music. Now, we are going to discuss some important features of understanding the history of music. So, okay, let me ask you that why are you trying to learn the history of Indian music? What makes you to learn the music history? So, can anyone answer my question? That the participants can answer this question directly.
Sir, maybe to know how the music has developed since the ages, what was the form it had over 100 years ago, and if we could draw some parallels to it with the present music, maybe that may be one reason.
Yes, yes. Correct.
We should be aware of our culture.
Yes. Yes. So when we understand music, we can know the culture in totality. Yeah, that's good. Kalpana Jain, you can answer. Yeah. Anyone who wishes to answer, you can raise your hand. Yeah. कोण बोलत होता आता?
हा, मी कल्पना जैन बोलते. तर मला असं वाटतं की आपला संगीत जे आहे ते पूर्वीपासून थोडं बदलत आलेलं आहे स्वरूप त्याचं. तर एक्झॅक्टली कुठल्या वेळी कशा प्रकारचं स्वरूप होतं आणि ते आता कसं चेंज होत आलेलं आहे, त्याच्या टर्मिनॉलॉजीज फक्त बदलल्या आहेत की त्याच्या गायकीमध्ये फरक पडलेला आहे, हे सगळं जाणून घेण्यासाठी आपल्याला ही हिस्ट्री जी आहे ती मदत करते. म्हणजे त्याचा अभ्यास करतो आपण समजू शकतो.
बरोबर. Okay. So I think most of you are quite clear about why you intend to learn the history of music. So let me elaborate this point a little bit. Learning the history of music doesn't mean knowing just about the origin and development of music. Prominent events or pioneering characters in the past. But we should try to investigate about the changes in two dimensions, that how the fundamentals in music change. Like we know that it is explained to us that in the Natya Shastra period, the basic fundamental saptaka was somewhat like Kafi Thaat of today. And today we are practicing the Shuddha Saptaka as Bilawal. So in a way, that is a fundamental kind of change. So why there was Kafi sort of Saptaka in ancient times, how the Saptakas or Shuddha Saptaka changed in due course of time, and how we landed on Bilawal Thaat. And also we can try to understand the fundamentals of music in a way, like the concept of raga is very fundamental to our music, though it is not fundamental for the other music cultures like Western music or African music or Chinese, Japanese music. So the concept of raga and tala is not there, though they have melodic designs, melodic improvisations, rhythmic designs and rhythmic improvisations. But still, the highly developed or codified concept of ragatala is not there in other music cultures. So how we landed on this fundamental framework of raga and tale, which we practice today. So that is understanding this is very important to realize what we are actually doing right now. And the second factor, after understanding the fundamentals of music, we need to know how these fundamentals were applied in actual music performances and what were the changes of such performing idiom. And so if we investigate on these two dimensions, we will be able to know firstly our roots, and secondly how we have landed on the present state of music making. So in this direction, I propose some 8 pointers for learning music history. So, okay, I will again share my screen so that these pointers you can take down or you can screenshot them. So these 8 pointers are very much important. One should be curious about the transitions in these 8 points while learning the history of music. So what are these 8 pointers? Firstly, which were the performing spaces of music? So it's just not about geography, like the Vedic music was in northern part or southern part. It is not about that space. I am talking about performing space. So whether that sort of music was performed in temple or royal court, so was it chamber music or was it open air music? So, and we need to understand this performing space better because the entire music presentation depends on that. How we present the music depends on this performing space. So when we talk about Tansena singing in royal court and Swami Haridas singing in a temple or his matha, so that changes the music entirely. Though the rag or composition might be the same, the strand or strategy of performance changes entirely. And that's why we should ask this question if we are trying to locate the history. So what is the performing space and how it changed? Secondly, time of music performance. So when the musicians were performing, what was the duration of the performance? Like it is always told that in the older times, like say hundreds years back, the music concerts used to go for a long night. Even the Sangeet Natak, musical theater, that used to happen for a whole night. So that was the stamina of the performers. Now we don't perform for such longer duration. We just perform, say, for 2.5 hours or maximum 3 hours. So even the 3 hour performance with 20 minutes interval. So in actual we perform just for 2.5 hours. So the timing or the duration is reduced. So why this happened? Why people used to perform that long? So understanding this time and duration, timing of music performance shades a lot of insight, that gives a lot of insight on how the music changed. Okay. The third point is medium of music as cultural expression. So how the voice was used, or which instruments were used, uh, whether it was a solo performance or a group performance, or whether they were performing with ensembles, what sort of medium and paraphernalia was used for the presentation. So when we see that in ancient times, some people say that, oh, it was more of community performance or a group performance than solo. I have listened to a lecture demonstration by a veteran singer of this times. He's a very respected singer, but he tells a wrong story of ancient music. He says that ancient music was sort of group singing, and in medieval period we landed on solo singing, and that's why khayal gives more emphasis on personal improvisation of the ideas. It is not true. From the ancient times itself, we find solo performers. Like from the 5th century BC, we have anecdotes of performers being performing on solo mode. So we need to address these points, or even like how people were using their voices. Like for say 100 years back, there were no microphones, and people were using their voice in a entirely different kind of force or vigor or volume. And today's voice production technique has totally changed. So has it affected our music making? So if you understand about the medium of music making and the medium of music as a cultural expression, we better understand the history of music. Also, which were the modes of musical presentations, like the form and content of music. Like we are always told that, oh, there was Jati Gayan, then it was replaced by Prabandha Gaan, then it was replaced by Drupad, then we landed on Khayal. So, is it true? We need to address that. So, which were the forms of presentation, and what was the content of presentation, and which were the fundamental concepts? So, if we plot them and we understand them chronologically, then we can make the entirely different kind of picture. Like there are a lot of misconceptions, like Thumri was formulated in the court of Wajid Ali Shah. So it's a completely wrong notion. We find even the word Thumri prior to Wajid Ali Shah, and of course from ancient times there are many forms similar to Thumri, or we can say that they were prototypes of Thumri. Though the name Thumri is not in ancient times, we can see that, oh, this form was like a Thumri. Adhikari ki Thumri was there in ancient times. So we need to understand what was the mode of musical presentation in every era of the history. Then next important point is what were the performing strategies and how they changed. So rules and regulation for music present. So when we see that when Khayal started growing up, the Dhrupad singers were not happy. They were uncomfortable with Khayal singers because they thought that these Khayal singers are contaminating our ragas. They are not having Shruti Yukta Lagav. And they are using Tan as a faster melodic contour. And that is spoiling the core of raga. So they were disturbed. Now this is a change in performing strategy. So why was this change? What did it affected on the overall music performance? Then, of course, what was the social aspect of this change? Who were the people? Who were the performers? From which community or class were they? And we need to understand it's not just about the music makers, but also who were the music patrons, who were the musicologists, or who were the instrument makers. So all such things are important to understand, because social aspect is a very like it's backbone of the music making. When we see that certain community was making music, like Dhadi and Mirashi, this was music makers community in medieval times, or there were Tawaifs or Devdasi. That was a prime community in later medieval times, who were prominent music makers. Today we have lost all such communities, and the music making is changed, or it has shifted to other strata of society or other classes and communities. So how was this change happened, and what did it actually culminated into? We need to understand that. And after knowing this, we can know why the music of, say, Tawaifs or Baijis or the singers from Devdasi tradition was of such kind, and why we cannot produce that kind of music. So it will open our eyes in that direction also. The second last point is about economic dimensions. So what was the performing model with the economic mode? So understanding the patrons, the transaction, economic transactions, because understanding the economic dimension, we get to know about the mindset of the performer as well as the patron or the consumer of music or the listener. I will like to share the anecdote here. Most of you might be knowing about this. Once King Akbar said to Tansen that, "Oh, you are such a great singer, and you are a wonderful singer, but your guru must be superior than you, and I need to listen to his music." So Tansen said that he will not come to your court. We need to go to his place and listen to him. So Akbar and Tansen went to the ashram of Swami Haridas in disguise, and Akbar got an opportunity to listen to Swami Haridas, and he was so mesmerized that he asked Tansen, "Oh, you are the disciple of Swami Haridas, so how come he sounds so different than you?" So Tansen asked that, "Khavind, मैं तो आपके लिए गाता हूँ, आपकी खुशी के लिए गाता हूँ. So I sing for you, but my guru, Swami Haridas, sings for the divine." So here is the economic dimension. Swami Haridas was not singing for the patron. So this there is no give and take for the music. And on the other hand, we know, especially in the last 100 years, how the economic forces have changed, or they have shaped or reshaped the entire music making. So it is very important to understand the economic dimension for the music. And lastly, the cultural connection, the overall cultural connection, which formulates the aesthetics of music. See, the music is fundamentally in a way same. Everywhere you will find the same notes, the same laya or tempo is there. There are rhythmic structures. Everyone sings with the song, that is lyrics, or everywhere we find instruments. But the music making changes according to the aesthetics. And these aesthetic values are shaped by the cultural connotations. So if someone sings like so for the North Indian ear, this is something weird, but for the South Indian connoisseur, this is something great. So this aesthetics of music depends on the cultural ethos, and we must understand how this cultural ethos in a way shape the aesthetics of that particular time, particular space, and then only we can understand the music making in total, in totality. I think you must be thinking that, oh, these are 8 pointers, and how we are going to discuss all these pointers. So let me make it clear that I'm not going to discuss about all these 8 pointers about ancient, medieval and modern music history. I'm just giving you a direction that you need to understand all these pointers, 8 aspects of music history, so that you can understand the history in a better way. And unfortunately, there is no history book that explains all these things. Because I think most of the authors who have written the history of music, they are not from history background, they don't know historiography, and naturally they have not written the history of music in which a historiographer can write it, or they don't have the insights of historiography. But we need to understand that these are not just insights from a historiographer. These are the insights from a musician or a musicologist. And that's why we need to understand these 8 points of each time and space to understand the music of that particular time and space. And now we also need to understand which were the major transitions and transformations in music. Usually it is believed that the music has developed from transitions, like from primitive music, it changed to ritualistic music or temple oriented art, Mandira Gami or Mandirashrayi Sangeet. Then the music went into royal courts. So music became, was performed under royal patronage. So it changed. And in the modern period, music became lokashrayi. It became democratic, or it came into public sector. It became a social commodity. So it is usually explained like this. So these are the 4 steps of music, like big primitive, then ritualistic, then royal court music, and in the music in public domain. But we need to check if this notion is correct or not. And like usually it is said that all ancient music was devotional or spiritual by its nature. And when music came into the courts of Muslims, it became erotic. And so our pristine spiritual music became contaminated. It's very funny notion, I think. It is not so. This is not true. Because even in ancient India, there were kings, was court music. Like from the 2nd century AD, we get a inscription of King Kharvela from Kalinga, that is today's Odisha. It is written that on the 3rd year of his coronation, he invited around 1,000 or more than 1,000 musicians, and this is in a way first evidence of a royal music festival, music conference held by kingship. Naturally, the music was performed in the courts. If you read about Kalidasa Sahitya literature, you will find that, oh, he explains, basically Kalidasa's literature is court literature. He explains about the court life. He doesn't speak of common people or masses. He speaks of classes. And when he explains about a rivalry of true gurus and Mardangikas in the court of Agnimitra, King Agnimitra, in his play Malavika Agnimitram, we to know that there was court music in ancient times, and it was completely erotic. It was not spiritual music. So we need to check all these notions and actually plot the transition and transformations in music with the chronology and cultural ethos. Okay. Are there any questions? Because I think it's already 7:52. So I usually think that like 10 minutes at the end will be better for question answers. Yeah.
Can I ask one?
I think some people have raised hands. Yeah, you can ask the question.
Sir, 8th point you mentioned cultural connections.
Yeah.
So does it mean Bani of Drupad and Gharanas, Khyal Gharanas contemporary?
Pardon, I was not able to listen you properly.
Yeah,
I missed
I'm repeating it. Yeah, your 8th point for learning music history is cultural connections.
Yeah.
Does it go hand in hand with Drupad Baniya and Khyali Gharanas?
No, cultural connections, yeah. So Gharanas are in a way social aspect, like the lineage, family lineage. It comes under the social aspect of music. With cultural connotations or connections, I mean like music is not a separate entity. It is not monolithic sort of art. It always interacts with the other arts and the overall cultural ethos. So there is a reflection of painting or dance or theater on music. There is a reflection of food culture or the style of singing. So all such things which are components of culture.
Okay, you mentioned aesthetics in that. That is why I asked
Yeah,
you.
Actually, this living shapes our aesthetics, and with the aesthetics we make the music. So when we see, I will answer your point of gharanas. Like gharanas have specific aesthetic values. Each gharana has its aesthetic stand. So how these gharanas developed in certain geographical area, why they were having such kind of aesthetic is a major point of investigation. We can understand the aesthetics on the basis of the cultural connotations. I will explain it when we will land to this of the formulation of gharanas in the medieval and modern times. I will explain that.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Geetanjali Harad, you can ask the question.
I want to ask that, is I audible? Hello? Yes, sir. I want to ask that only. There are so many books and so much variety of material there is available, but to which what will be the resource nowadays to study in details the history of music in an authentic way?
Okay.
In
Okay. Yeah. So you want to ask that which are the authentic sources of history of music, Indian music?
Yes.
Okay. So I am very sorry to say that there are very few books on Indian music which we can treat as authentic sources. Most of the books are in a way biased, or they portray a wrong sort of history. Like there are many misconceptions. I will explain such misconceptions and I will clear them in the due course of this course. But yeah, like the book by Thakur Jaidev Singh, that is a good book.
Okay.
You can trust on that book. It's in English, Indian music, and a book on ancient music, Bharatiya Sangeet Ka Itihas. You will find the same name, Bharatiya Sangeet Ka Itihas, written by different authors. Like there is a book by, I think, Umesh something, Sharat Chandra Paranspe. There are a lot of books, but I think for ancient, yeah, there are many books which we can say that these are authentic, like Swami Prajnananda's book or Sharat Chandra Paranspe's book. They are good works. But for music, I doubt there are very authentic sources. Yeah, but you can trust on some books like Sharyu Kalikar's book, Chitrankono Dwara Bharatiya Sangeet Ka Itihas. That is a good work. Or Thakur Jaidev Singh's book, just as mentioned. Even there are few books written on individuals or some specific tradition, like for the modern trends or the gharanas, you can depend on Ustad Bilat Hussain Khasa's book, Sangeetagya for Sansmaran. That is an authentic work. Or Acharya Brihaspati's books. We can trust on Acharya Brihaspati's books. Though they are a little, we can say, rightist or Hindutvavadi, his approach was pro-Hindu and in a way anti-Muslim. But I think most of the theories he has proposed, or most of the facts he has mentioned, are correct. So, even if we don't accept his interpretations, we can rely on the facts which he has mentioned. Okay. I think I will give you a list, a bibliography of some authentic books by the end of this workshop. Yeah. Then there was another question. Yeah, Gitima Deka, you can ask the question.
Sir, can you give me more examples of court music before invasion of Islam in India?
Pre-Islamic India, court music in pre-Islamic India. Yeah, I will give. When we are going to discuss about ancient music, I think on the fourth day, I will explain. I will give many more such examples. Yeah.
Okay. No, sir, I have a very basic doubt or basic question regarding music. Actually, even long before this, these 8 points, I just would like to know, when did the notes and shrutis come into existence? Means I've read briefly that ruchas in Vedas, they were sung in actually 3 notes, that is Sarega. So when did all these shrutis, that Komal Tivra notes and Madhyam, when did it come into existence? And
Okay, I will
also,
explain you. Actually, when we are going to talk about ancient music, I will explain. But let me make it clear that there is a wrong notion that Vedic music was in three notes, Udatta, Anudatta, Swarita. It was not like that.
okay,
In Vedic times itself, there were 7 notes, and even there were Vibhata Swaras also.
okay,
And like the later texts like Pushpa Sutra Pratishakhya, which is prior to Natya Shastra, gives Saptaswaras. So we can say that in Vedic times itself, the Saptaka was there, Swara Saptaka was there. And for Shruti, you can say Bharata's Natya Shastra gives a clear exposition of 22 Shrutis.
yes,
And when the mentions that Sarana Chatushtaya Prayog in such a elaborate manner, and he mentions the Purvasuris also. That means the earlier musicologists. So it is very much clear that this concept of Shruti was much earlier than Natya Shastra. So we can say that the Swaras and Shrutis was in a way a phenomenon that was developed prior to 5th century.
okay.
I will explain it in detail.
आणि रागाची निर्मिती कशी झाली ते पण आपण घेणार आहे का?
नादाची निर्मिती.
राग.
Okay, I will explain a little bit in the day when we will talk about musicological trends, like
नाही, रागाची निर्मिती.
Rag. Oh, that also I will explain while explaining the ancient Indian music.
Thank you so much.
Sir, I have one question regarding the Dhari and Miraj communities. Do these communities still exist as musical performers?
Yeah, there are reminiscence of these communities, we can say. Like many families of tabla players or sarangi players were originally from this Dhari or Mirasi community, and they are still there. So yes, but of course, in the modern social setup, they don't like to call Mirashis or Dhadis because they feel that calling themselves like Dhadi or Mirashi is something like socially downgraded. Like in Maharashtra, we have some certain communities which were traditionally music makers, like Mang, or there are 2-3 communities in Maharashtra which were the traditional music makers, but they don't call them with that certain community today because they feel that it is socially downgraded. So this whole issue of social classification in post-independent era is very tricky. So even though these communities do exist in modern times, they don't pronounce it like those.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Bhargava Ranganath, you can ask the question.
Sir, I had a doubt here. We are talking about plotting transitions and transformations of Indian music through the ages. How is that done? I want to know what is the mechanism of doing that.
I didn't get your question.
Plotting transitions or transformations of music.
Plotting the transitions. Okay. Yeah. Basically, we need to understand the musicological sources, like the musicological treatises, and what they ascribe. Like we can say that from Natya Shastra to Brihadeshi to say Bharatbhashya or Manas Ullas to Sangeet Ratnakar, from every text there is some degree of change. which we can see in these texts. And we need to corroborate the other evidences like sculptures, paintings, then other sources, archaeological sources, we can say. So corroborating all these sources, literary sources or musicological texts and the archaeological evidences, will actually plot these transitions. So, of course, in ancient times, such sources are less, they are few. But from 5th century onwards, we have a lot of sources, though they are mostly literary. But yeah, there are sculptures, paintings, like archaeological sources. So with that, we can plot. Actually, I will explain some points about the plotting of the transitions when I will explain the ancient and medieval times. Like, for example, in the ancient sculptures, we get certain type of instruments. And in the medieval times, gradually we can see the shift in the instruments. And even with the musical instruments, we can understand that what kind of music was performed along with using these instruments. So when there were hard type veena, and it later to the Kachapi veena, that is sliding sort of veena, lute type veena. So that clearly explains the transition and transformation in music. So in this way, we can locate or plot the transitions. Yeah, are there any questions? Or we can end the session, today's session. I think I have given you basic structure of or basic understanding or insight about the history of music, or how we can study the history of music. And I said it is actually impossible to explain the entire history of Indian music in just 7 days. But I intend to give you a bill or insight for the further study or going into details. So in the course, I will just explain the bigger part, and then you can go into the depth of the topics with these insights.
Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot, sir. Actually, it's a wonderful journey from our ancient to these different periods. And you are mentioned regarding these inscription sources and manuscripts also. So जब हम किसी भी विषय का अध्ययन करते हैं तो एक वाइड पर्सपेक्टिव हमारे पास होना चाहिए, तभी जाकर के हम उसे ठीक से अंडरस्टैंड कर सकते हैं. ये आपने बहुत ही अच्छा हमें समझाया, मार्गदर्शित किया. आपके परमिशन से, with your kind permission, now we will stop here today's session and we will meet again tomorrow. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you
very
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a
Thank you,
lot,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.